And we're live. Today's reading topic, I decided I was watching a seminar last night and I got some great ideas. It's 2021, August, September, and October, just around the corner. Fall time, as Jim Rohn says, it's the season to take responsibility. Right now, we're in summertime, so we're just tending the garden. Um, Raking out the leaves, getting out the cobwebs, clearing up weeds, doing some weeding. So then we have a clean and clear harvest for September and October. And then we can reap the harvest in September, October, fall time. And that's time to take responsibility. So right now we're doing some weeding. And today's topic, and also we're going to try some more things, and we're going to continue to persist and persist longer. So today's topic, I named try more things and persist longer, and then your success is guaranteed. So I'm just going to do some reading again from Dr. Hill's classic masterpiece from 1937, Think and Grow Rich. Try more things and persist longer. Riches do not respond to wishes, they respond only to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. Every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Perseverance, the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. The 8 steps to riches. Persistence is an essential factor in the procedure of transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent. The basis of persistence is the power of will. Willpower and desire, when properly combined, make an irresistible pair. People who accumulate great fortunes are generally thought of as cold-blooded and sometimes ruthless. Often they are misunderstood. What they have is willpower, which they mix with persistence and place back their desires to ensure the attainment of their objectives. Henry Ford was generally misunderstood to be ruthless and cold-blooded. This misconception grew out of Ford's habit of following through on all his plans with persistence. The majority of people are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. A few carry on despite all opposition until they attain their goal. These few are the Fords, Carnegies, Rockefellers, Edisons, and other outstanding achievers of the world. There may be no heroic connotation to the word persistence, but the quality is to a person's character what carbon is to steel. The building of a fortune generally involves the application of the entire 13 principles of the Think and Grow Rich philosophy. These principles must be understood. They must be applied with persistence by all who would accumulate money. If you are following this book with the intention of applying the knowledge it conveys, your first test as your persistence will come when you begin to take the 6 actions described in chapter 1. Unless you're one of the 2 out of every 100 persons who already have a definite goal at which you are aiming and a definite plan for its attainment. You may read those instructions and then pass on with your daily routine and never comply with those instructions. I ask you to evaluate yourself on this point because lack of persistence is one of the major causes of failure. More experience with thousands of people has proved the lack of persistence is a weakness common in the majority of them. It is a weakness which may be overcome by effort. The ease with which lack of persistence may be conquered will depend entirely upon the intensity of one's desires. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desires bring weak results, just as a small amount of fire makes a small amount of heat. If you find yourself lacking in persistence, this weakness may be remedied by building a stronger fire under your desires. Continue to read through to the end of the chapter, then go back to chapter 1, and immediately start to carry out the instructions given in connection with the 6 action steps. The eagerness with which you follow these instructions will indicate clearly how much or how little you really desire to accumulate money. If you find that you're indifferent, you may be sure that you have not yet acquired the money consciousness which you must possess before you can be sure of accumulating a fortune. Fortunes gravitate to individuals whose minds have been prepared to attract them, just as surely as water gravitates to the ocean. In this book may be found all the stimuli necessary to attune any normal mind to the thought vibrations which will attract the object of one's desires. If you find you are weak in persistence, center your attention upon the instructions contained in the chapter on Power of the Mastermind. Chapter 9. Surround yourself with a mastermind group, and through the cooperative efforts of the members of this group, you can develop persistence. You'll find additional instructions for the development of persistence in the chapters on autosuggestion and the subconscious mind. Chapter 3 and Chapter 11 follow the instructions outlined in these chapters until your habit nature hands over a clear picture of the object of your desire to your subconscious mind, which works continuously while you're awake and while you're asleep. From that point on, you'll not be handicapped by lack of persistence. Spasmodic or occasional effort to apply the rules will be no value to you. To get results, you must apply all the rules until their application becomes a fixed habit with you. In no other way can you develop the necessary money consciousness. Poverty is attracted to the one whose mind is favorable to it, as money is attracted to the one whose mind has been deliberately prepared to attract it. And through the same laws, poverty consciousness will voluntarily seize the mind which is not occupied with money consciousness. A poverty consciousness develops without conscious application of habits favorable to it. The money consciousness must be created to order unless one is born with such a consciousness. Catch the full significance of the statements in the preceding paragraph, and you will understand the importance of persistence in the accumulation of a fortune. Without persistence, you'll be defeated even before you start. With persistence, you will win. If you have ever experienced a nightmare, you'll realize the value of persistence. You're lying in bed half awake with a feeling that you're about to smother. You're unable to turn over and move a muscle. You realize that you must begin to regain control of your muscles. Through persistent effort of willpower, you finally manage to move the fingers of one hand. By continuing to move your fingers, you extend your control to the muscles of one arm until you can lift it. Then you gain control of the other arm in the same manner. You finally gain control of the muscles of one leg and then extend it to the other leg. Then, with one supreme effort of will, you regain complete control of your muscular system and snap out of your nightmare. The trick has been turned step by step. You may find it necessary to snap out of your mental inertia through a similar procedure, moving slowly at first, then increasing your speed until you gain complete control of your will. Be persistent, no matter how slowly you may at first have to move. With persistence will come success. With persistence will come success. With persistence will come success. If you select your mastermind group with care, you will have at least one person who will aid you in the development of persistence. Some individuals who have accumulated great fortunes did so because of a necessity. They developed a habit of persistence because they are so closely driven by circumstances that they had to become persistent. There's no substitute for persistence. It cannot be supplanted by any other quality. Remember this, and it'll hearten you in the beginning when the going may seem difficult and slow. Those who have cultivated the habit of persistence seem to enjoy insurance against failure. No matter how many times they are defeated, they finally arrive at the top of the ladder. Sometimes it appears that they have a hidden guide whose duty is to test through all sorts of discouraging experiences. Those who pick themselves up after defeat and keep on trying arrive, and the world cries, "Bravo, I knew you could do it." The hidden guide lets no one enjoy great achievement without passing the persistence test. Those who can't take it simply do not make the grade. Those who can take it are bound to be rewarded for their persistence. They receive as their compensation whatever goal they are pursuing. And that is not all. They've received something infinitely more important than material compensation, the knowledge that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. There are exceptions to this rule. A few people know from experience the soundness of persistence. They are the ones who have not accepted defeat as being anything more than temporary. They are the ones whose desires are so persistently applied that defeat is finally changed into victory. We who stand on the sidelines of life see the overwhelmingly large number of who go down in defeat and never to rise again. We see the few who take the punishment of defeat as an urge to greater effort. These fortunately never learn to accept life's reverse gear, but what we do not see, what most of us never suspect of existing, is the silent but irresistible power which comes to the rescue of those who fight on in the face of discouragement. If we speak of this power at all, we'll call it persistence and let it go at that. One thing we all know, if one does not possess persistence, one does not achieve noteworthy success in any calling. As these lines are being written, I look up from my work and see before me, less than a block away, the great mysterious Broadway of New York and the graveyard and dead hopes and the front porch of opportunity. From all over the world, people have come to Broadway seeking fame, fortune, power, love, or whatever it is that human beings call success. Once in a great while, someone steps out from a long procession of seekers, and the world hears that another person has mastered Broadway. But Broadway is not easy nor quickly conquered. She acknowledges talent, recognizes genius, and pays off in money only after one has refused to quit. The secret of how to conquer Broadway is always inseparably attached to one word: persistence. The secret is told in the struggle of Fannie Hurst, whose persistence conquered the Great White Way. She came to New York in 1915 to convert writing into riches. The conversion did not come quickly, but it came. For 4 years, Miss Hurst learned about the sidewalks in New York from first-hand experience. She spent her days laboring and her nights hoping. When hope grew dim, she did not say, "All right, Broadway, you win." She said, "Very well, Broadway, you may whip some, but not me. I'm going to force you to give up." One publisher, the Saturday Evening Post, sent her 36 rejection slips before she broke the ice and got a story across. The average writer, like the average in other walks of life, would have given up the job when the first rejection slip came. She pounded the pavements for 4 years to the tune of the publisher's no, because she was determined to win. Then came the payoff. The spell had been broken. The unseen God had tested Fannie Hurst, and she could take it. From that time on, publishers beat a path to her door. Money came so fast, she had hardly time to count it. Then the motion picture crowd discovered her, and money came not in small change, but in floods. The movie rights to her novel, Great Laughter, brought $100,000, said at the time to be the highest price ever paid for a story before publication. Her royalties from the sale of the book increased her fortune further. Briefly, you now have a description of what persistence is capable of achieving. Fannie Hurst is no exception. Wherever men and women accumulate great riches, you may be sure they first acquire persistence. Broadway will give any beggar a cup of coffee and a sandwich, but it demands persistence of those who go after the big stakes. Kate Smith would have said amen reading this. For years she sang without money, without price, in front of any microphone she could reach. Broadway said to her, "Come and get it if you can take it." She did take it until one happy day, Broadway got tired and said, what's the use? You don't know when you're whipped, so name your price and go to work in earnest. Miss Smith named her price. It was plenty, up in figures so high that 1 week of her salary was far more than most people made in the whole year. Verily, it pays to be persistent. And here is an encouraging statement which carries with it a suggestion of great significance. Thousands of singers whose vocal skills exceed those of Kate Smith are walking up and down Broadway today looking for a break without success. Countless others have come and gone. Many of them sang well enough, but they failed to make the grade because they lacked the courage to keep on keeping on until Broadway became tired of turning them away. Persistence is a state of mind. therefore can be cultivated. Like all states of mind, persistence is based upon definite causes. Among them, what I call the 8 factors of persistence: 1, definiteness of purpose; 2, desire; 3, self-reliance; 4, definiteness of plans; 5, accurate knowledge; 6, cooperation; 7, willpower; 8, habit. Persistence is the direct result of habit. If you really wish to know who you are and what you're capable of doing, you must master 16 weaknesses before accumulating riches. The major one is fear of criticism, which leads to failure to create plans and put them into action because of what other people think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in one's subconscious mind, where its presence is not recognized. The majority of people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear criticism, which may follow if they correct the mistake. Millions of people neglect to acquire related educations after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless numbers of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to direct their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require anyone to submit to the destruction of one's personal ambitions and the right to live one's own life in one's own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear the criticism which may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than the desire for success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who will say, "Don't aim so high, people will think you're crazy." When Andrew Carnegie suggested that I devote 20 years to the organizational philosophy of individual achievement, my first impulsive thought was what people might think and say of me. People might say, "Remember your humble birth? What do you know about philosophy? People think you're crazy." And they did. Why hasn't some other person done this before now? These and many other questions flashed into my mind and demanded attention. It seemed as if the whole world had suddenly turned its attention to me, the purpose of ridiculing me into giving up all desire to carry out Mr. Carnegie's suggestion. Later in life, after having analyzed thousands of people, I discovered that most ideas are stillborn and need the breath of life injected into them through definite plans of immediate action. Many people believe that material success is the result of favorable breaks. There's some element of truth in the belief, but people who depend entirely upon luck are nearly always disappointed because they overlook another important factor, which must be present before one can be sure of success. It is the knowledge with which favorable breaks can be made to order. During the Depression, W.C. Fields, the comedian, lost all his money, found himself without income, without a job, with the means of earning a living. Made obsolete order. He was past the age of 60 years old. When people consider him old, he was so eager to stage a comeback that he offered to work without pay in a new field. In addition to his other troubles, he fell and injured his neck. Too many of them would be in the place to give up and quit. But Fields was persistent. He knew that if he carried on, he would get the break sooner or later, and he did get them, but not by chance. Mary Dressler found herself down and out with her money gone with no job when she was about 60. She too went after the breaks and got them. Her persistence brought an astounding triumph late in life, long beyond the age when most men and women are done with ambition to achieve. Eddie Cantor lost his money in the 1929 stock market crash, but he still had his persistence and his courage. With these plus 2 prominent eyes, he exploited himself back into an income of $10,000 a week. Verily, if one has persistence, one can get along very well without many other qualities. The only break anyone can afford to rely upon is a self-made one. These come through application of persistence. The starting point is definiteness of purpose. Examine the first 100 people you meet, ask them what they want most in life, and 98 of them will not be able to tell you. If you press them for an answer, some will say security, many will say money, a few will say happiness, others will say fame and power, and still others will say social recognition. Ease in living, ability to sing and dance and write, but none of them will be able to define these terms or give the slightest indication of a plan to which they hope they attain these vaguely expressed wishes. Riches do not respond to wishes, they respond only to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. How to develop persistence? There are 4 steps. There are 4 simple steps which lead to the habit of persistence. They call for no great amount of intelligence, no particular amount of education, and but little time or effort. The necessary steps are: 1, a definite purpose, backed by burning desire for fulfillment. 2, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. 3, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. And number 4, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. These 4 steps are essential for success in all walks of life. The entire purpose of the 13 Principles of Think and Grow Rich philosophy is to enable one to take these 4 steps as a matter of habit. These are the steps by which one may control one's economic destiny. They are the steps that lead to freedom and independence of thought. They are the steps that lead to riches in smaller great quantities. They lead the way to power, fame, and worldly recognition. They are the 4 steps which guarantee favorable breaks. They are the steps that convert dreams into physical realities. They lead also to the mastery of fear, discouragement, and indifference. There is a magnificent reward for all who learn to take these 4 steps. It is the privilege of writing one's own ticket and making life yield whatever price is asked. While the Simpsons' rise from obscurity was slow, progressive, persistent order, but she was sure. She triumphed over unbelievably long odds, and no matter what you are or who you may think of Wallace Simpson, or the king who gave up his crown for her love, she was an astounding example of applied persistence and instruct on the rules of self-determination from whom the entire world might profitably take lessons. For more than 40 years, King Edward was not a free agent, could not live his life in his own way, and had little privacy, and finally assumed duties inflicted upon him when he ascended the throne. Some will say, with all these blessings, King Edward should have found peace of mind, contentment, and joy of living. The truth is that back of all the privileges of the crown, all the money and fame and power inherited by King Edward, there is an emptiness which could be filled only by love. His greatest desire was for love. Long before he met Wallace Simpson, he felt this emotion tugging at his heart. King Edward's decision to give up the British crown for the privilege of going the remainder of the way through life with the woman of his choice was this decision that required courage. The decision also had a price. Who has the right to say the price was too great? His desire for love led him to openly declare the love and give up the throne. And let it be known that no complaint from either church or the public, but this unusual man was built of stern stuff. His love was deep and sincere. It represented the one thing which, above all else, he truly desired. Therefore, he took what he wanted and paid the price demanded. Most of the world today would applaud the Duke of Windsor and the Wallace Simpson because of their persistence in searching until they found life's greatest reward. All of us can profit by following their example in our own search for that which we demand of life. What mystical power gives to people persistence, the capacity to master difficulties? Does the quality of persistence set up in one's mind some form of spiritual, mental, or chemical activity, which gives one to access to supernatural forces? Does infinite intelligence throw itself on the side of the person who still fights on after the battle has been lost, with the whole world on the opposing side? These and many other opposing similar questions have arisen in my mind as I have observed in individuals such as Henry Ford, who started from scratch and built an industrial empire of huge proportions with little else in the way of beginning but persistence, or Thomas A. Edison, who with less than 3 months of schooling became the world's leading inventor and converted persistence into the phonograph, the movie projector, and the incandescent light, to say nothing of 100 other useful inventions. And just remember that he failed 10,000 times before discovering the light bulb. But he said, I hadn't failed 10,000 times. He said, I found 10,000 ways that did not produce the result that I wanted. And he achieved. The greatest inventor of all time, Edison, achieved the impossible by creating the light bulb because he tried more things and he persisted longer. I had the happy privilege of analyzing and studying at close range both Mr. Edison and Mr. Ford year by year over a long period of years. And remember this: So I speak from first-hand knowledge when I say that I found no quality save persistence in either of them that would even remotely suggest the major source of their stupendous achievements. I had the happy privilege of analyzing and studying at close range both Mr. Edison and Mr. Ford year by year over a long period of years. So I speak first-hand knowledge when I say that I found no quality save persistence in either of them that would even remotely suggest the major source of their stupendous achievements. As one makes an impartial study of the prophets, philosophers, miracle workers, and religious leaders of the past, one is drawn to an inevitable conclusion that persistence, concentration of effort, and definiteness of purpose were the major sources of their achievements. Consider, for example, the strange and fascinating story of Muhammad. Analyze his life, compare him with individuals of achievement in this modern age of industry and finance, and observe how they have one outstanding trait in common: persistence. If you're keenly interested in studying the strange power which gives potency to persistence, read a biography of Muhammad, especially the one by Asad Bey. This brief review of that book by Thomas Segru in the New York Herald Tribune will provide a preview of the rare treat in store for those who will take the time to read the entire story of one of the most astounding examples of the power of persistence known to civilization. The Prophet Muhammad, this is just the added bonus. The Prophet Muhammad had a great quote that I feel is one of the great quotes that inspired me to always carry a pen and a notebook around. He said, at the end of the time, at the end of your life, he said, "Man shall be judged by his pen." I just love that. So it's something we can leave behind, so people can read it and look at it. Man shall be judged by his pen. That's one of my favorite quotes of all time. And that's from the Prophet Muhammad. I just wanted to share that with you. The Last Great Prophet, reviewed by Thomas Segru. Muhammad was a prophet, but he never performed a miracle. He was not a mystic. He had no formal schooling. He did not begin his mission until he was 40, when he announced that he was the messenger of God, bringing word of true religion. He was ridiculed and labeled a lunatic. He was banished from his native city, Mecca, and his followers were stripped of their worldly goods and sent into the desert after him. When he had been preaching 10 years, he had nothing to show for it but banishment, poverty, and ridicule. Yet before another 10 years had passed, he was ruler of Mecca and the head of the New World religion, which was to sweep to the Danube and the Pyrenees before exhausting the impetus he gave it. The impetus was threefold: the power of words, the efficacy of prayer, and man's kinship with God. His career never made sense. Muhammad was born to impoverished members of a leading family of Mecca, because Mecca, the crossroads of the world, home of the magic stone called the Kaaba, great city of trading and center of trade routes, was unsanitary. Its children were sent to be raised in the desert by Panoans. Muhammad was thus nurtured, drawing strength and health from the milk of nomad, victorious mothers. He tended sheep and soon hired out to a rich widow as a leader of her caravans. He traveled to all parts of the Eastern world, talked with many men of diverse beliefs, and observed the decline of Christianity into warring sects. When he was 28, Khadijah, the widow, looked upon him with favor and married him. For the next 12 years, Muhammad lived as a rich and respected and very shrewd trader. Then he took to wandering in the desert, and one day he returned with the first verse of the Quran and told Khadijah that the archangel Gabriel had appeared to him and said that he was to be the messenger of God. The Quran, the revealed word of God, was the closest thing to a miracle in Muhammad's life. He had not been a poet, he had no gift of words, yet the verses of the Quran, as he received them and recited them to the faithful, were better than any verses which the professional poets of the tribes could produce. This, to the Arabs, was a miracle. To them, the gift of words was the greatest gift. The poet was all powerful. In addition, the Quran said that all men were equal before God, that the world should be a democratic state, Islam. It was this political heresy plus Muhammad's desire to destroy all the 360 idols in the courtyard of the Kaaba, which brought about his banishment. The idols brought the desert tribes to Mecca, and that meant trade. So the businessmen of Mecca, the capitalists, of which he had been one, set upon Muhammad. Then he retreated to the desert and demanded sovereignty over the world. The rise of Islam began. Out of the desert came a flame which would not be extinguished, a democratic army fighting as a unit and prepared to die without wincing. Muhammad had invited the Jews and Christians to join him, for he was not building a new religion. He was calling all who believed in one God to join in the single faith. If the Jews and Christians had accepted his invitation, Islam would have conquered the world. They didn't. They would not even accept Muhammad's innovation of humane warfare. When armies of the Prophet entered Jerusalem, not a single person was killed because of his faith. When the Crusaders entered the city centuries later, not a Muslim man, woman, or child was spared, but the Christians did accept one Muslim ID at the place of learning, the university. Religious visionaries such as Muhammad, business leaders such as Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Andrew Carnegie, political leaders such as Samuel Adams, entertainers such as Fannie Hurst, Kate Smith, and W.C. Fields, cosmopolites such as Wallace Simpson and Duke of Windsor. No matter what their walk of life, individuals such as these in all eras of human history have demonstrated the tremendous power of the 8 step to riches: persistence, sustained effort in the face of all odds and all adversity. Persistence creates faith, and faith is the only antidote for failure. It is the starting point of all accumulation of riches, and is the only agency through which one can tap the force of infinite intelligence. Great power can be accumulated through no other principle than that of the mastermind. Power of the mastermind, the driving force. Persistence creates faith. From faith comes power, and power is essential for success in the accumulation of money. And remember this beginning quote of the chapter: riches do not respond to wishes, they respond only to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. Persistence, the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. And remember, through faith and perseverance, you can realize your goal in life. Through faith and perseverance, you can realize your goal in life. Thank you. Talk to you next time. Try more things and persist longer. All the best.